All right, one of the stories this past week has been the injury to the right ankle of Tua Tagovailoa, Alabama's starting quarterback, my number 2 rated player in the 2020 NFL draft class. He had a high ankle sprain so bad that they had to have surgery. And he's probably going to miss a couple weeks of the season. And it's putting a lot of question marks into Alabama's season because when Tua got out, their backup quarterback, who didn't look terrible, but was a significant drop off, and they kind of struggled with Tennessee for quite a while. And what's that going to be going forward? In this SEC when the schedule gets a little bit tougher, then you're not playing Tennessee and you're playing the rest of the SEC West. And this is not new for Tua because last year, if you remember, he started to struggle at the end of the year, and it was because he had another ankle issue, this time on the left ankle, that also required a surgery. And you definitely see when that ankle was bothering him, he was a different type of player. And if last year, you remember, he struggled against Georgia, Jalen Hurts had to come in and replace him and actually outplayed him and helped Alabama beat Georgia in that SEC championship game. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is I had kind of heard this and I just wanted to cover it. Is these 2 ankle injuries, is that going to be a little bit of a red flag for Tua when he enters in the NFL draft? Now, I'm an avid podcast listener myself. So I kind of, listen to a lot of different podcasts, read, information about the draft. And before this season started, I had seen Tua, all that stuff. I scouted him this summer. I really liked him. But when I was hearing national people with connections to NFL teams talk, it didn't really seem like they felt that Tua was this guy that was going to be a high NFL pick, like a top 10 NFL pick. I kept on hearing his name, and it seemed like they were just kind of lukewarm on him. And it wasn't outright saying, oh, well, Tua's, NFL teams don't see Tua as highly rated as the media does or as draft Twitter does. Instead, they just, and maybe I was just reading too much into it, but it's just the way that they talked about him just didn't seem the glowing praise that you see from him. And then with this ankle injuries, NFL teams are always overthinking things, always over-examining things, and you wonder, with a history of injuries, we've seen that in NFL draft, where if a player has an injury history of his past, that will cause some teams to push them down their boards for maybe players that didn't have those same medical issues. I don't know if his 2 ankle surgeries are going to medically flunk him from some teams, but it could push him down. Maybe, they're comparing 2 quarterbacks. One's Tua, he's got these 2 ankle issues in back-to-back years, and there's another quarterback over here that doesn't have those injury history. And so maybe they when they're deciding between the 2, they go with the other one instead. And if we look at this year, Joe Burrow is a quarterback that's really caught fire under this new LSU offensive staff with Joe Barry as their passing game coordinator. He's really caught fire and just blown up. And if you look at any 2020 mock drafts, he's always at the top. He's at the top now. We're seeing him projected number 1 in some people's mock drafts, top 5 in others. It's still super duper early, and Tua hasn't played, or Burrow hasn't played Auburn yet. He hasn't played Alabama yet. Potentially, whoever. Florida was great. Texas, those have got some athletes on their defenses, but I want to see him against Alabama's defense. I want to see him against Auburn's defense and see how he does there. But if he does well there, could that put him up there? He's Burrow's a bigger quarterback than Tua. He doesn't have an injury issue. What about Herbert? Herbert doesn't have injury. He had an injury a couple years ago, but it's just been that one injury. I think this is something I don't know. I'm not personally going to drop him down my rankings because of this. I don't factor in injury issues. I could, but what's the way that you do it? But I think it's something we can't just scoff at and say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. It's a high ankle sprain. But the fact that he's had ankle injuries the past 2 years, I don't think it's something that we can completely ignore. And when the NFL draft comes, if he declares, Tua is only a junior, so he might not even declare this year for the the 2020 NFL draft. But when he does, I think that's something to keep an eye on. And if he slides down a bit, this might be a reason for that. You know, Jawan Taylor last year was my top one of my top offensive tackles. I had him as a top 10 overall prospect. I thought he could go in the top 10. He slid to the second round, and it baffled me a little bit. But then it came out that his knees, he's might been bone on bone and missing a lot of the cartilage in that, and that's what caused teams to pass. Now he's gone in the NFL and had a very good rookie season so far, but teams were worried about would he make that second contract. If Tua's ankles are an issue, and teams feel, can he make it? Can he hold up in the NFL because he is a bit of a smaller quarterback or smaller compared to the ideal size that a lot of teams like? Once again, that could push him down. Durability, size, all those little things that we over dissect do matter to these NFL teams. So let's not completely push this to the side. Keep it in the back of our minds. But it'll be kind of curious to see. I hope he gets back. I'm a huge Tua Tagovailoa fan. I can't wait to see him in Alabama play the rest of the year. But this is definitely something I'm keeping my eye on and putting in the back of my head for when this stuff does come up.